live. Hey, welcome to the Palatial Bassmaster Studios in Birmingham. And it's been a while since we've done one of these, but we're excited to get with another Elite Series angler. And with me, Clifford and Alicia Pirch, all the way from somewhere, Arizona.
Yeah, Payson, Arizona.
Payson, Arizona. And we would love you to send us some questions. We're going to interview these two for a few minutes and have an opportunity to get to know them better. Clifford is no newcomer to the sport, obviously. If you've been following it for any amount of time, you know that he I think we talked earlier, like you're looking at 25 years doing this?
Well, I guess that's about what it adds up to. Yeah, I didn't really count far back enough, but I think so.
Well, let's talk quickly. You kind of really had a breakthrough at the U.S. Open on Lake Mead, and you've won that 3 times.
It's been a real good one for me. Yeah, I've been really fortunate there.
Talk about that tournament. How many people fished that?
Well, you know, it's just always been a big Western event. This year, I think they had like 225 people or something, 25 boats. But it you know, it varies, you know, from year to year. But it's definitely been growing again here recently, and just a historic big Western tournament. It's the Western Super Bowl, and where lots of guys got their start. You know, the Gary Kleins, the Gary Yamamoto. You know, those are past winners. John Murray, you know, famous Arizona angler, and you know, it's something that all the greats went to back in the day too. Before there was lots of opportunities around. You know, the Roland Martins, all you know, all the big fishermen went to the U.S. Open. So it's a big Western event, and you know, fortunately, it's gone well for me there, so it's been good.
And the Elite Series has gone well for Clifford. Has been to the Classic, do we say 6 times?
I think this will be my 6th.
This will be this coming up this year will be his 6th visit in 6 years as a pro. So that's a pretty good consistent number. The other cool consistency we found is that he's finished in 13th place both times you've been to Lake Hartwell.
Yeah, you know.
It's not first place.
No,
but
yeah, hopefully I can do a little better here soon, but it definitely enjoy going to Hartwell. It's a good place to fish.
We're going back to Hartwell in April this year. I think that's a different time of year for us to be at that lake. What do you think? You excited about that one?
Yeah, I'm real excited. I really like that time frame because, you know, you're a little bit more mainstream spawn probably, and you know, probably got a little bit where they've finished spawning and a little bit where they're not spawned yet. So it's a little, you know, a little more stable. You know, when we went this year for the Classic, they were just trying to go spawn, and so gives you a little bit more variety, you know, what you want to be doing, and I definitely like that time frame. It's been good to me, you know, occasionally in the past, and I like to spawn.
Well, Alicia, I've got a question for you. You've been a part of this every step of the way, through the highs, the lows, the ups and downs, the excitement. How do you keep your family together? And just give some advice to the new young anglers coming in. How are they? Your example. Give the example. How do you do it?
Oh, boy. Well, it's not always easy. But, you know, I found that I just have to start my day in the right place. And I give my day to God. I hand it over, and, you know, whatever happens, I just try to just stay in the positive, because so many times, and he knows this, I mean, I'm not perfect, and there's times that things can get really frustrating, you know, whether it's in the field of fishing or whether it's, you know, kids at home and you want to pull your hair out, and he's gone off fishing, and, you know, so like I said, it can change. It's just an attitude, I think. I've always fully supported what he's done, you know. It's not been the easiest road sometimes, but
it's a great story.
It is. It is.
And we just had them in for a podcast, and it will come out in the near future, but make sure you listen to it. It's literally one of my favorites. So, I mean, that is sound advice. Lots of young anglers coming in that are married, maybe aren't married yet, but the lifestyle is something you have to commit to.
Yeah.
And it's messy.
It's messy, but it's rewarding. Do you have any questions for us yet?
It doesn't really scare away any fisherman, though. Is the thing. You know, they're guy that's a diehard and gonna do it. That's their life, and so I understand that.
And I knew that going into. You know, he was like this before we got married. So
it was like this, like it's a condition. It is. I get it.
It probably is.
Tim Trini wants to know, what's your favorite tour lake?
My favorite tour lake, well, I've got a handful. So if I could give several, I loved it when we went to the California Delta. I mean, that was, it's my dream every time they come out west. I love that, and obviously going to Havasu was awesome. Almost got to get the win, didn't quite, but some of my other favorites are St. Lawrence, St. Clair, Mille Lacs, Falcon. Those have all been really, really some of my favorite events. Those are. I'm kind of more of a slugfest guy. That I understand that sometimes you got a better chance to win at some of the tighter and tougher events, but man, I enjoy good fishing.
Yeah,
So
right.
sometimes you're places where you'd rather be somewhere else, and so I really enjoy the real slugfest type of fisheries for sure.
James Hall asked, if you were to rate the nickname Mercer gave you on a scale of 1 to 10, what would that ranking be?
And that is, let's say this like it sounds, the Golden Ram. The Golden Ram. I kind of like to emphasize different parts of it.
You don't really get to pick your nickname, so I'd have to rate it as it could be a lot worse. I got to roll with it, I guess. But Dave Mercer and Dave Rush, Matt Pangrak, all those guys, they kind of pieced that together, I guess, somewhere in the beginning of this season.
Think of the irony if you drove a Golden Ram pickup.
I know, and I just retired one, and
Not golden, it was a white ram.
Yeah, I
It was
just
a ram.
retired one, and I've heard that would be, that would be a good route to go. But
I
I've
think
got
it's
a
a great
gold.
nickname.
I've got a golden Toyota this season, so.
The Golden Toyota.
Yep.
Thanks, James Hall, for such a great question. I'm glad you're not working on the magazine right now.
Brad and Janie Prince said, can't wait for Bass to return to Winyah Bay in April. Will fishermen be allowed to go to Cooper River this time?
I heard yesterday, Tripp in the meeting said that's going to be an option, I think. So I think guys are going to be able to travel. That's a scary one to me. There's a lot of factors in driving that far and traveling that far. I mean, I have full confidence in my equipment. I'm running a Suzuki and a Phoenix, and you're half saltwater in that event. And the saltwater guys will tell you, just about how solid the reliability is. But that being said, there's a lot of things that can go wrong going that far, and that's a real scary one for me down there. I practiced over there where Britt won, and Brett Height did good, and I caught a few fish over there, but my thinking was, man, you pile 3, 4, 5 guys in the one little stretch that you want to fish, and you've got just a couple hours to do your damage, and it's also tidal. So, there's so many little things that got to come into focus on a deal like that. It scared me a little bit, but that's probably going to be how to do real good again and make one of those long runs, and I might be one of them, but it's a scary process to go that far. You got to go all the way out, basically to the ocean, and then you got to go down to. I may not get these names right, but I feel like it was Charleston Bay.
I think that's right.
Or basically you're going down the Atlantic coast to another river, down and further south by a long ways, and then back up into fresh water and trying to catch bass and get them back to weigh in.
Well, you said you like those types of tournaments where that's going to be a tough one. That's going to challenge a lot of anglers. The fishery is vast. There's lots of great fish to be caught, but it is different. It's difficult. It's tidal. How do you approach a tough tournament like that as opposed to a slugfest for your practice?
Well, I guess it depends, and that's something I'm trying to balance in my career. I historically I was more of a power fisherman and a home run kind of guy, and I've learned that I needed to be far more consistent and to survive on the elites. In the last 6 years, I've been more about trying to make sure I'm making safe decisions and catching fish, and like you said, I've got the classic 6 times. Well, if you don't get those points, you don't make it. So I've had to make that choice, and I need to get back to where I'm balancing the chance to win with consistency. You know, maybe I've gone a little bit too conservative, and I'm trying to rebalance that. So, you know, the previous time we went there, I'll be honest, I looked at that, I practiced it, I felt like I could catch them there, but I decided not to do it because I thought, you don't make it back one day, and you're out of this deal.
And that could be a hinge point on making a classic.
Points wise, you can't afford to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and so I decided to fish, you know, within 20 miles or something, and salvaged a decent tournament, got a check, got good points, and you know, made the classic. But
sometimes it's not good to be too rammy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the guys that did real well though, they made the gamble. You know, you didn't hear about the guys that drove down there and didn't make it back. You know, I talked to someone yesterday. He didn't make it back on that run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He had to turn his fish loose.
Yeah.
Never made it to weigh-ins that day, and there was a number of those guys that made that risk, and it didn't work out. So it's a tricky one. That's a scary question on that Winyah Bay for sure.
Speaking of tricky, I want your opinion on Bass Track. One of our favorite technologies at the elite events, but it's a gamble to follow Bass Track because a lot of guys like to sandbag. And well, I know you're actually pretty accurate on it. How do you
He
watch
sandbags
it
the
every day?
opposite, actually.
He does.
What he does is I see if he says he has, let's say, 20 pounds, then I add about 1.5 pounds to that, and I'm usually about right. Then I'm like, okay, wait, because he usually skims a good 4 to 6 ounces off of each fish. It seems like that's where I've learned, but that's because I know him, and it seems to be usually that accurate. But like he said, when he has a marshal, I'll call him up, and I'm like, is Bass Track right? And usually it's because I'm concerned that he's not,
Right.
he's not in the money. There's something going on here.
Yeah,
And,
I've had a few of those phone
had
calls.
some.
You get to the weigh-in line, and I see her calling like, is that right? You know, did
Oh,
your
yeah,
Bass
2
Track
fish?
work, or was that, you know?
Come
you're
on,
like,
Clifford, you gotta catch more than 2 fish. We have any
Yeah.
more questions rolling in?
Yes, Jim Saxon, our boss,
Oh,
would like to hear more about your wrestling career.
My wrestling career, you know,
did you wear a mask?
I can't. No,
Is it
no
real
mask,
wrestling
no
or
makeup,
like
Pass
no,
out the people's elbow kind of thing?
no crazy swing from the ceiling kind of stuff. But you know, I come from a big wrestling family. My dad and my brother, I'm kind of the least in our group because my dad is actually a Hall of Fame coach. He has maybe 10 or 12 state championship teams and 10 or 12 seconds, and this was a big deal in our hometown. So wrestling was a major deal in Payson growing up. My brother was a couple times state champion, and he went on to be an All-American at Cornell University. So I'm definitely the least of them. I wrestled all growing up and through high school, and then I decided I wanted to fish and go this route. But really a fun part of our history, where I live, and it was a really big deal in my hometown, and I've said this before, but our hometown, basically they put a banner across the main highway in town every night that we had a wrestling meet or a tournament, and the whole town showed up. There was standing room only. It was huge. We were winners. It was a big, it was a fun deal because it was such a serious thing in our town. Huge history there for 20, 25 years or so, and it's not quite like that anymore, unfortunately. But it was a fun time for sure.
Was it the Payson was the name of the town?
Yes, Payson.
The Payson Golden Rams. That would have been a great mascot.
It's actually the Longhorns.
Yeah.
Close.
Sorry, I'm running that joke into the ground. Sorry about that. Thanks for the question, Jim.
We have another question from Mickey Thomas. How do you feel about the guy that made the last classic spot being the Tennessee River stick that he is? Matthew Robertson won the team championship down in Florida and got that last classic berth.
Well, if that's where he's from, and he's the Tennessee River guy, he's probably going to be tough to beat. But everybody in the field will be tough to beat. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. I mean, heck, Ott Defoe lives maybe 10 minutes away from
Probably
Fort
the
Mount,
local favorite in that tournament.
Yeah, I
would
mean,
guess.
there's a number of guys that are just going to be killers there, and so You know, sounds like we've just added another, but you know, it's hard to compete with those kind of guys. They have the knowledge of what happens and when it happens and how to fish it, and they'll be really competitive. But I'll tell you this, about 10 years ago or 7 or 8 years ago, I went to a lake just down the river on Chickamauga, and you know, you could hear everybody saying, oh, it's going to be this or it's going to be that, and you know, and some guy from Arizona somehow ended up winning because there was a freak thing going on that week, you know, and I won on a lake that I never imagined winning a tournament on. So you just never know, and this caliber of fisherman, that's how it'll go. Somebody will put everything together, do all the right things, and you know, somebody that was supposed to win may or may not, and somebody that really you wouldn't expect. You know, there's always somebody in that mix. So, you know, I'm looking forward to it, and sounds like that guy probably will too. And I'm not familiar with him yet, but
You
he.
didn't see his hat in any of the pictures? It said on him.
Oh,
okay. Yeah.
I did see that. Yeah, he's on them.
Yeah, well, and he'll be on that week, so I'm sure he's really excited. That's a great opportunity. I'm sure it'll be a big deal for him.
Another one from Brad and Jamie Prince. I coach a high school team. What are some basic bait presentations to teach youth that are new to bass fishing?
Well, you know, that's the beauty of bass fishing. There's a huge variety of things you can do, and it depends on where you're at and what type of fishery you live on. But, you know, for young people and getting into it, a big deal is just catching fish. You know, I mean, let's face it, when you go out and don't catch them, it's not near as much fun as when you catch them. And so I would use baits that you get numbers of bites with. You know, I probably wouldn't send out your first time guy to go punch matted grass for 4 bites on a cold post frontal day in Florida. So you know, that being said, I would stick to things that get lots of bites. You know, your worm fishing, you know, little crankbaits, little swim baits, top waters, you know, and time frames that are good where, you know, you can expect to catch them, you know, no matter what you're doing, you can expect to catch some fish. So, like I said, there's a million baits you could choose from, but I would stick to the things that are, you know, work well in your area for catching fish. You know, just numbers. You know, it's fun to throw a 12-inch swim bait, but if you go do it for 3 days and don't get bit, it's you know, guys probably not going to be too into it. So I would stick to the things that really get bit a lot.
David Zhang has 2 questions. Do you have any new sponsors for 2019? And what would you be doing if you didn't fish professionally?
Well, I got to handle both of those separately, obviously. I do. I've just talked with the guys at AFTCO. They've got some neat outdoor clothing, and they're huge in the saltwater world. And it's kind of funny. Most of my sponsors, they really excel in the saltwater world, and you kind of find out you can learn a lot from those types of companies, and they have great stuff, and you can take it into the freshwater world. So, you know, the AFTCO guys, just talking with the Big Bite Baits guys this week, and that's a new one for me, and obviously the guys that have carried me through the last few years, Suzuki and Phoenix Boats, Phoenix Rods, and the Dick Seapeck guys, great tires, and you know, good all-around outdoors. So, you know, got some new ones, got some folks that have been with me, and I definitely appreciate all of them. They're great companies.
So if you weren't fishing?
Boy, that's a hard one, you know.
I know what it is.
It's the weirdest thing. When I was a little kid, you know, I always just knew I was going to do something fishing related or hunting related. You know, lots of kids get excited for cars and neat toys. I mean, my deal was a BB gun, a duck decoy, a shotgun, you know, a fishing lure this or a fishing lure that. So those were big deals for me. So I don't know really what else I would be doing, but I went to college thinking maybe if this didn't work, I could be in wildlife management or some type of field where I would be able to be outdoors and spend time with fishermen, doing fishing, doing hunting, things like that. So that's fortunately I'm able to do what I do because that's just exactly how I'm made. So.
I don't know if this is a friend of yours, but Mark Pasella
Okay.
asked if you could send him some elk meat.
Yeah, Mark. Mark's a great guy. I see him when we go to the St. Lawrence. He lives up there and world-class smallmouth, around every corner he turns. And so, Mark's a good buddy.
You should have brought some elk meat to
I-
this. I would have been in on that.
I tried to put that together, but I was thinking between the drive and an ice chest, and by the time you get somewhere, how good you can expect it to be for folks. I was a little concerned, but I need to figure out how to travel some elk meat around the country. Sounds like Mark needs some and needs some here. I'd love to get it to the service guys. I'm always thinking of Andy at Phoenix Boats and Happy and at Power Pole and all the guys that kind of take care of us on the road.
You know what you could do?
Need to get better about.
You could
figuring
ratchet
that
strap
out.
a big old freezer to your boat and get a generator on the front and just run the power through it on your drive. I mean, that's a haul. I mean, how long does it take you to get from your house to about here? I mean, so Alabama, let's just say that.
Well, probably about. It said 24 starting out, but it really.
I think it was more.
It's always more. Yeah,
Seemed
it
like
just
3
ends up. There's an extra hour here and there that just gets thrown in. So, yeah, it's 24 to 26 to here, I think. And
It's a long way.
And this is just kind of a medium average drive. It's not a St. Lawrence or an Okeechobee or a Charlotte or.
Yeah, that is Arizona, St. Lawrence River. That's kind of like across the country
It's
the long way.
ways. Yeah, long ways.
Well, let's do one more question and we'll wrap it up.
What's your favorite technique for cold water bites?
My favorite technique for cold water bites, it's got to be a jig. I've got a handful of things that I fish cold water with. I've got a drop shot, a crankbait, a jerk bait, and a jig. A number of things. But if I could only use one of those to produce good bites, it'd probably go a jig and like a football jig in general at cold weather and where I fish the most, out west on rocky reservoirs, a football jig is gonna be my meat and potatoes for sure. It's just bass. They really like crawdads in the wintertime. They really like rocks, and that's a great crawdad rock fishing machine. So that's probably would be the way I'd have to go if I only could pick one.
Well, if you have more questions, you could probably check out his social channels, and you're on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes, sir.
Is there any more?
Well, those are the only ones that I'm capable of posting and figuring out how to use this far.
Well, the Golden Ram, ladies and gentlemen, and Mrs. Golden Ram.
Thanks.
That's probably not a super nice. Sorry, you.
I was always wondering where he got that name from.
Well-
but I figured he just changed his New Jersey to gold. It was more
I
green.
think it might be the
and then it was the
hair.
that
You have
comes out the
fantastic hair
visor.
again today, by the way.
Yeah.
Usually when he's coming off the water, it's the best. It's been long for the summer and it's all blown, and you gotta have good hair if you're gonna fish at this level.
James Hall added the details on the cold water football jig will be in January issue of Bassmaster.
Yes, that's true.
That's
And
right.
James was able to put that in there for me. We just talked, and I guess that issue's like ready to be printed. So
Yeah.
it's got a combination of stuff I would use through this whole phase of fishing. When we kind of get towards the tail end of winter and just over the next 2 months, really good reservoir tips on a handful of baits. So thanks, James. That's
Now get
Very
back
good
to
call.
work. Do something today. Seriously. Alicia, Cliff, thanks for being here. Safe
you.
travels home, and we'll see you on the trail.
all right.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you,
here.
guys.
Mhm.
Shh. Don't say anything yet.
We made it.
Almost. And
We're still on.
you're doing a great job, Emily. We did it.